you'll see that. So it probably will ask you if it's okay. Thank you, Pete, for that reminder. I'm not usually the host of the things that I'm a part of. I'm usually a participant. Being the host, you have to think a little bit differently. You got to watch to see who's coming in and going out. Oh, Shadleen is there. Excellent. So good. It's good to see you. I'm going to pronounce your name wrong. Shadleen or Shadeen, or I'm not sure.
Shadlin.
Shadlin, that's it. It's good to have you, Shadlin. I remember that now. My apologies, and happy you're here. Thanks for being here. We were just taking a quick look at Latasha's, the name of her program, and then her benefit statement related to that. Did anybody else bring maybe a fictitious name of a program, something they were thinking of, and maybe a benefit statement? Has anyone else had time to really do that? Don't worry, you're not graded on it. Just something to think about.
I have SP charities.
SP charities, and what's the benefit statement then?
The benefit is helping older people instead of younger people. Seniors and disabled.
Are they playing basketball? Are they playing basketball too?
Only watching it, not playing it.
Oh, okay. You know, a little bit of teasing going on there with Pete. So, actually, it's not uncommon that people do name the charity itself after, maybe they use their own name, maybe they use some other kind of, some people name things after the places. One of my favorite organization is the Salvation Army. It has to, and you can get a little bit of their purpose in the name. It's a religious institution, actually. And so you get a little bit of that, their purpose. So those are good things. So it's important when you put it together a program. Now remember, the agency is one thing. What the agency is about is a mission. And then you create programs that each have their own benefit, and the benefit could be different. For example, even jokingly, we were just talking about, if Pete was really following something through with older adults, it might be a program for young kids, teenagers, adults, and the mission, the benefit statement might be slightly different for each group, or even those who are disabled as well. So it can go a little bit differently for each group, and I think that's a really important thing. Anybody else want to share one before we move on to other training and thoughts? Any thoughts? Anybody take a guess at a fictitious program and maybe a benefit statement? You want to throw something out, just an idea we can synthesize, see if we can come up with something.
I guess they're all eager to learn the next step.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about some of our next steps and be able to do that. I can talk all I want to about grants, but there are some pieces that are just very, very basic about grant writing. One of them really is, where do you find grants? And that's a really basic statement, and it's easily said, not always easily done. And there are a number of sources out there, and I will provide you a written list, but that's not my full focus today. But the reality is that there are grants that are at every level. So you can have government grants, and at every level. There could be federal grants, state grants, county grants, city grants. My favorite grants, though, are private grants. For example, I mentioned last week several times working with Stu Leonard's. Anybody have any idea why you think I would prefer a private grant to one of those government grants?
Less of a headache and paperwork.
Less of a headache and paperwork. Yes, that's part of it. And what do you mean by paperwork, by the way?
Like following up and writing 20-page detailed descriptions of what you're looking to do for the program.
That's very true. They ask me for one page, and it's a pre-printed question. So they ask you about 3 questions. How many kids did you teach how to swim? How many lifeguards did you train? And that's pretty much it. And then you just explain and just give a less than a paragraph of narrative, and that's it. That's all they ask of me. My favorite grant, if I had all my grants were all like that, my life would be nice and easy, as case might be. Now, what do you think they ask for from government levels for grants? What kind of information do you think they might ask for? If you've dealt with government, you know, the IRS and all the rest of that, what do you think they might ask for?
Areas that you're serving, zip codes, the population, the demographics, the age range.
The receipt, all the
Receipt.
A copy of every receipt. And we talked a little bit about saving the data last week, saving all the information, the background, the receipts, and all those kinds of things. You should do that even if they don't ask for it. You should do that anyway, so you have a way to report, and also so that you don't double dip. What do I mean by double dip? Anybody have an idea what double dipping means?
Get money from multiple organizations and create partnerships. So like 25 from the Y and 25 from Salvation Army.
Okay. Now that's not necessarily double dipping to have separate organizations. What would make it double dipping? Double dipping is more of a negative term, unless you're at the amusement park. Double dipping would mean getting the same money for the same thing. For example, let's say I'm going to renovate a room, and I get $25,000 for that, and another organization contacts me and gives me another $25,000 to renovate the same room. What should I do? Send the check back?
Make a nice $50,000 room.
That's one possibility. What else might be another idea?
use it for a different room, like a different
purpose. And now,
Yeah.
but what you do is you explain to, you know, if the first one you already agreed to the particular project that you put out there, fantastic. The second one, you definitely want to explain, hey, we just received funding for that, but here is project number 2. You know, and give them a separate project and go from there. Now, there might be cases where people will never ever find those things out, but being a person of integrity, you would want to make sure that it's very clear that they're actually paying for something separate, because one of the things that you want to do is people with money tend to breed people with money, or tend to know people with money. So at some point they're going to want to say, hey, I want to take you down to a project that I just did at Latasha's agency. Let's go on over there and let's be able to touch base. And I want to see what we invested in. And they go to room number 1 and they think they've invested in room number 1, but they really invested in room number 2. That may not be a good thing. So it's good to always keep the donor informed. Let them know of any changes. Do changes happen? Can it cost more or less than what we originally projected?
Yes.
It can.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, if you're familiar with ever renovating, anybody ever renovates your home or renovate something, and you assume it's going to cost this amount, and it's always, generally it's more, almost always more. Even in the grant world, that's still true. You get something, you get someone to give you a bid. They say $15,000, and when you're done, it's $28,000. You want to keep that all up front and make sure your donors know all the way. How do you inform your donors of what's going on? What are ways that you would inform your donors of what's going on?
Postcards or emails, letters.
Postcards, emails, letters, newsletters. You know, is it good to keep people informed? And not necessarily does every newsletter have to have at it, if you'd like to donate to my organization, then do this, and this. Not every time do you have to do something like that. Sometimes you just simply just need to keep people informed as to what's happening. If the more informed they are, the more connected they are. The more connected they are, and the more buy-in they have with you, the more they're willing to stretch with you. The whole world knows that nothing ever goes exactly as planned. So they're willing to stretch with you. So make sure you're prepared to go all the way, tell everybody what's happening, be more outward than inward. Don't try to keep secrets, because secrets will get you in trouble later on. So make sure you're sharing what's happening in terms of your process, your program, and all of those kinds of things. So that's a really important thing. Communicate. You're going to be able to make great things happen. The more you know. Matter of fact, recently at my agency, we had a fire. We had unfortunately, young man commit arson and set fire, and our kitchen burned up. And now I could have just kind of kept that a secret. Now, of course, we don't let you know who, what, when, where, or what charges they might be facing, all those kind of things. But first thing we did was, not necessarily the first thing, but one of the things that we did in the early days was to let our donors know, hey, this is what we're going through. Even the people that are grantors, you'd be amazed at how much money people have put up to help us be able to get things back in order and be able to move forward. Don't be afraid to tell the story. Your story oftentimes will be accompanied with great support from other locations. So it's really an important thing. I thought what would really, yes, go ahead.
how do you distinguish what needs to be said or not, or do you just err on the side of sharing everything? Because there's some things might not be that necessary or helpful to the.
What I would do is, first of all, private issues, meaning name, detail. We come up with in some of our programs, we use abbreviated names, initials, things like that. We always try to hide the identity of the person that we're talking about, unless they want to do a real interview and give permission for that. Is everybody familiar with what the word press release is, a press release form? When you're taking pictures of people these days, and we don't do it, social media, we just take pictures of everything. And we just people post it on TikTok and all the rest of that. But if you use something like that and you're using it for fundraising purpose, do you not know that you owe the people that are connected with you money? Because if you're raising money, they get a portion of it because you use them to do it, unless you do what's called a release, a media release, and they're signing up and saying, I understand that you're using it for a charitable purpose. You have my permission to be able to do so. Those are really important things because you do need to tell your story. So just understand, so people's privacy still needs to be kept intact, especially if they want it to be that way. If you haven't asked, don't do it. You can change the names, you can share information as long as you don't change the name. Share the things that show, I'm going to use the phrase, a work of grace, where somebody has come from darkness to light. So you might want to share the negative situation and then the positive outcome as a result of what you've done. So that's it's kind of that. Now you don't necessarily want to report out. We said this is going to cost $200,000, go $200,001. You don't want to drag people down for minor things like that, but you want to share the major things that could potentially turn into continued donations, continued opportunities. That's what you want to do. Don't be afraid to tell your story. I think that's important. Did I answer your question, Latasha?
Yeah.
Okay. Again, keep the private things private and keep the things that can go public. Chances are, if you love hearing the story, the parts of the story that you love to hear, parts of the story that you ought to tell, except for maybe the names. So that's just the piece that you want to really deal with. Now, if you know the person, it can be a great benefit, as the case might be. All right. What I wanted to do, I thought would be a really good exercise for us. I pulled an old grant application that we did a couple of years ago and I thought it would be really good to kind of do this. I'm going to give you a couple of rules about grant writing, and then we're going to share this application. So number one would be, if you have the opportunity of a grant application, before some people get something in the mail and they start responding to immediately, I'm going to suggest read the entire application first. That's an important thing to do. Read the entire thing first. Why? Because it might be something written and might be very obscure that rules you out from being able to receive funding from that source. It might look good. The first couple of sentences are fantastic, but you get down there to page number 4, and it may be one of those things that says, hey, this doesn't fit you. Okay, you have to give one finger off your left hand every 2 weeks to the one who's donated the money. You definitely don't want to go there. There are restrictions in some grants, and they're not always the first thing that they say, because they want to get the message out that they're giving away money, because that gives them just universal PR. But then if you drill down, you might find out. I think I joked about it a little bit that it might be to all bald people, or it might be to all left-handed people, or it might be only to women, or it might be only to men, might be only for children. So you definitely want to read everything through. There are a lot of applications out there. Pete and I have talked a little bit. There's something called, I want to tell you about one of my favorite foundation search engines. It's called Foundation Search. Has anybody ever heard of that before? Foundation Search.
No, I haven't heard of that before.
Okay. Foundation Search is the largest database of grants in the country, and you could go on there and just about every grant. I'm saying just about, but I've never found one that I didn't see there. Every grant that's out there is published in this database, and in this database, they will tell you who's giving out the money. They'll give you the history. They'll give you several years of history as to how much money they've given. That's also one of the reasons why you definitely want to read through the application, because they might list some or they might refer you back to their websites. Why would we want to go to the website of a donor? We just want to grab their money and run, right? Or what would be the benefit of going to the website?
Getting information about what they're passionate about and just some direction.
Getting their passions, okay? Or finding out, if you find out that it's the Jones Family Foundation, you might want to find a little bit about the Jones family. So every so often you can say, talking about keep up with the Joneses in the application, as the case might be. You want to find out what makes them tick. And I think I shared last week that we speak every so often to Stu Leonard about, the impact that the death of his son has had on so many lives and so many lives that have been changed. And we keep bringing that up every so often. It keeps it, not that we're trying to keep death fresh, but we're trying to keep purpose fresh. Oh, I see a couple of people trying to get in. Thank you, Pete.
No problem.
Hi, what was the name of the website or where most grants are? What did you say?
Well, that was called Foundation Search. Now, Foundation Search is not a free search engine. It is an
Oh.
expensive search engine. I just did a proposal with them. They wanted to charge us $3,000 for 5 years to use their search engine. It's one of my favorites. But let me give you a couple of secrets. One, it's worth it. I should say that first, so I don't want to shortcut their business. Two, it would be on your personal computer and you'd be able to use it anytime you want. So that's great. But since most of us don't have $3,000 to just spend like that, and including organization, that's not always an easy thing to do. And it's very difficult to get the finance people to release that kind of money for fundraising. They kind of think fundraising should be a free thing. Nobody should put money out, but money should come in. So it's difficult. So there is at the Yonkers Public Library, and particularly if you're in downtown Yonkers, they offer it here. They offer it at the Will Branch on Central Avenue. So the Waterfront and the Will Branch both have copies of Foundation Search in their computers. And you can, if you have a library card, go down there, log into one of the computers, and go into Foundation Search and do research for grants. Now, the thing is, you get like a certain amount of time. I think the last time I was there was 1 hour. I haven't gone since before the pandemic, but I know they pay for their membership to keep it up to date. You can find a grant for anything. And in case I left anything out, let me say this, anything. So renting a facility, rebuilding a facility, right? Revitalizing a community, children's programs, seniors programs, swim lessons, you name it, and you can find a grant. I think I'm telling you, so many entries in their database that you would want to spend the next 24 hours sitting there just writing down organizations that you can remember. Now the problem is you only get 1 hour, and then log out, give someone else a chance to use the computer, and hopefully nobody else is behind you, and you log right back in again, you can get a second hour, that kind of thing. But once you become financially productive, my suggestion would be that you try to get your own membership so you have the access anytime you want to, because you all have that 1 o'clock in the morning when we can't sleep because there's so much on our mind about fundraising and we need to get this program off the ground. And you can't go to the library at 1 o'clock in the morning, at least not to my knowledge anyway, unless you're the janitor and you have the keys. Those are some of the things that you want to be able to get your hands on and get in and look at it anytime you want to. It also helps with just doing research for other people, because what happens is once you become a grant writer for one, other people are going to start asking, hey, what about this? What about that? What about that? What about that? People are going to kind of run with that to try to to get all they can from you in terms of grant writing. Anyway, so yes, go ahead.
What you said, the 3,000, is that just for 1 year, or how long is that membership for?
That was for 3,000 for 5 years.
Oh, 5 years. Oh, okay, that's not bad.
Years.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
So it's less than 1,000 a year. So that can be a good thing. That was the proposal that they set up for us, and that's probably based on the size of our organization, and they probably did some research on us before they did that proposal, and how many YMCA's they work with across the country. If you're coming with a brand new agency, a new organization, they might they set a different contract with different people. So
Got it.
just because I got a proposal for one doesn't mean it'll be the same for you. But I will say this, it's probably expensive no matter how you look at it the first time through, and it's gonna hit you like a ton of bricks when they say that. But here's the advantage. If you're writing grants for $25,000 or more, how long
Mhm.
does it take to recoup the money that you put out? You know, one of the things we haven't talked a lot about yet is the budget for a particular grant. When you're doing a grant, one of the things that you write into the budget is not just the staff, not just the supplies, but your overhead. And overhead would include purchase of purchase of the database to be able to do that. That's a legitimate expense that you can actually write in partially in most grants. Did I mention last week a good range of how much you can put in for administrative expense?
No.
10 to 15%. 10 to
Oh, okay.
15%. Some of the larger organizations are able to do a lesser percentage because their cash flow is a lot greater. And so you want to get as close to around 10% as you can. But the whole idea of an administrative line, and we're going to talk about budgets, we're going to look at one in just a few minutes. The whole idea is when you're looking at a budget, you're generally going to tend to list everything, but there's always expenses that you never cover. So let's say, okay, I'm running an agency, and the one program I'm doing is a special girls program to get girls walking. I'm thinking of Girls Inc., for example. So this one program, that's it's part of a larger organization, but this one program, I get a grant for girls taking going on walking excursions and things like that in order to stay in shape. So let's say I'm doing that, but how much does it cost? Let's talk about, take a guess. What are some of the expenses that might come with something like Girls Inc.? Just having girls take over. What are some of the expenses that you'd have? What do you think?
The
A
staff.
walking, just pick any walking club, doesn't have to be Girls Inc., but staff could be an expense. So you're talking the people who are going to walk with them. So you're going to have some staff
Right. If you
costs
buy
there.
shirts or gear like sneakers or something like that for them.
Workout gear. So
Yeah.
that's another legit. What else might be there?
Um,
Insurance
yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, because you're taking well, in any case, doesn't matter what age, somebody slips and falls, who might they blame? We're in a different kind of world. People love
Mhm.
to play the blame game. So insurance is always a good thing. What else?
Marketing
Marketing, good.
and join it.
Good. All right. Now, let's say now the program is paid for. Have we left anything out? Now, remember the first thing I said was it's part of a larger agency. So what might I want to think about related to the larger agency? Who's keeping the financial records? Who's the one sending the check out? Now some agencies, maybe every program has their own checkbook. That's not usually the case. It's usually one checkbook for the entire agency. Of course, it's computerized, not really a checkbook anymore. So you got to remember the CEO who spends time marketing the entire agency, including your girls club, including negotiating new funds, fundraisers, other kinds of things. How are we paying their salary? So one of the important considerations you want to be considered is that you need a little bit of edge in that budget, and that's what is considered administration or incidental kinds of things, overhead. So that would be in another category that you would definitely want to conclude. Now, you wouldn't if the agency is running 5 programs, ideally, how would you pay the CEO's salary or the CFO's salary for that matter? How would you pay it?
A portion from each grant.
A portion from each grant. That's the idea. Now, there are grants that don't give extra money for overhead. That's certainly a possibility. But if they do, you want to spread that cost out. So there's, again, some CEOs are just, for example, if I was going to pay Pete for anything, he'd be a marketer for me because he never shuts. I mean, he is just so good at telling the story. Sorry, Pete, I got a chance to take a hit at you. But Pete knows how to tell people the story. He's really good, and he knows how to twist all our arms until we do everything for him. So he represents a good, direct agency leader, because he can help spread that message out there. So it's something that's very, very important to consider the expenses so you don't lose that person. Now, when your agency begins to grow, that team may grow where it's a CEO, a CFO, you might have a marketing team. Now, where does all that money come from? It comes from some of your grant writing, other fundraising, things like that. So those are all pieces of things that you definitely want to give some consideration to in the budget. I don't want to get stuck there. I want us to actually walk through a grant application, the why is done. So give me a moment. Let me share my screen and make sure I grab the right things, because I stepped away from my desk and then it froze when I came back, and I've got a million things open. So hopefully I go to the right thing. So I pulled, can you see my screen? Can you see my screen? A Community Thrives?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I just pulled an old application of something that we'd run some funds for. I just want to kind of walk through the application to give you an idea of the kinds of things that, well, this was a simple one. Now, I was tempted to pull the hardest one that I've ever done, one of the federal ones, but we'll do that at another point. But I didn't want to scare you away before I win you in. So a couple of, so this came from the Gannett Westchester newspapers. Is anybody familiar? Can anybody name a newspaper in Westchester County that might be under Gannett? What might relate to it? What is the main paper of Westchester that most of us don't buy anymore? The Journal News. Is anybody familiar with that? See, nobody buys it anymore. See, that's the whole point. But they are the largest paper in circulation in Westchester County. And they have raised great amounts of money because of the circulation that they have. So they decided they wanted to do a grant in the community. And so they gave us this opportunity. And you can see, here's the form that they came up with. This is how we're going to give away money. And what do you notice in that first paragraph that sticks out in your mind? If you can read it. Can you read it from where you're at? What are the things that stick out to you? I see maybe 3 or 4 things that are really, really important.
The date,
The date. So what's that date represent? The deadline, right?
Yeah,
The deadline, right? What else?
Mhm.
What else about the date? What comes closely with that as well?
the time.
Offline
The
application.
time, right? So that means, should I upload at 11:59 or should I upload at 11:50?
11:50 so that it doesn't lag and
It
not
doesn't,
go.
right? Everybody's on their computers. At certain times, you just don't want something to go wrong last minute, so you always want to be ahead of time. And then you should, if there's a mechanism for that, if they develop one, some will give you a note back saying, we have received your application. That always makes me feel a whole lot better, but sometimes you don't get that. So you want to be ahead of time and do all those kinds of things. So that's important. What else sticks out in that paragraph?
Offline applications are not official applications, so you have to submit it online.
So it has to be submitted online, right? So those are important things that you need to remember. So that means no matter how good my offline application is, and I could have created the program that will cure AIDS, it's not going to be acceptable to these people because it wasn't done the way they asked for. And oftentimes, one of the biggest reasons why people turn away applications is because they didn't follow the rules. What was the first rule that I gave you a little while ago? Read the entire application through before filling it out. So in that case, that was there. And then it has an official rule section. We're not going to go there right now. What it does is just talks about what area that they're serving. So I'm just going to give you some quick things relative to that. So someone else is kind of, I think we lost Latasha for just a moment there. Some things that they've done is they scoped out what area that they serve. So if they're only serving Westchester County, can I apply from New Jersey?
No.
No, not at all. So it's an important thing to remember that follow all the rules, get through all the pieces, and go from there. So that's an important thing to remember. Pre-qualifying information, okay? Is your organization a charity? And that's exactly what they're asking that in that pre-qualification. qualification section. So as we're looking at it, it asks, are you a 501c3? Now, we talked about that in terms of most charities are 501c3. There's some other tiny exemptions and things like that. And so in this case, we would have had to check yes, no. There's no maybe. There's nothing that says we're in process or anything like that. They just want a yes or no. So that may be something you need to consider in filling something out. In most cases, it should be a yes if we're already a charitable organization. Now, here's one of the things that you have to know. It's who's the person that has all the answers in your organization. So for example, if Pete with PS Charities is filling out something, he'd be the go-to guy to get a copy of all the proper paperwork to do that. Now, sometimes that's very difficult to come by. So like for one club that I work with, my Kiwanis Club, which is a great club, all the paperwork is held by a guy who's totally not internet savvy. Does it help me or slow me down?
Slow you down.
It
Slow
slows
you
me
down.
down. Yeah, because I'm much more internet savvy. So for me, that's a big priority. That's something that has to come together, because if I don't have that, I'm really killing myself, as the case might be. So you have to figure out where you can get all of the answers and get them as fast as you can, because generally, and it's been my experience, I don't know if this is going to be true for everyone, most of the grants I get are last minute. Due tomorrow, due next week. And it's a 30-page application. It is an incredible thing. I don't have time to chase down all of the pieces that other people have. Some may require you to get letters of support. You don't want to go running to somebody and say, I need a letter of support by noon tomorrow. Well, first of all, today's Friday. Second of all, it's 5:46 in the evening. So all of the people that I would want to talk to who have the power to write the letter, the authority to be able to do it, have all just left to go home. This is not the time for me to call to try to get a letter of support from another organization. So that's why when you get an application, read it all the way through. You may have to turn it down because you can't get everything that's required, as the case might be. So those are some of the things that are there. So this application continues to go on. It asks for the organization's legal name. And so, you know, when I did this application, this was a couple of years ago, it was under the name of YMCA of Yonkers, Inc. And the reason I have to do that is because we're not just YMCA, because we just put YMCA, any YMCA can come and take our check. So I have to be very, very succinct about those thoughts. So I have to make sure I use the legal name, because they're going to back that up by saying, you know, again, the tax exempt status that's there. In this case, they will offer money to the municipalities. So that means the city of Yonkers could have applied for this. So they did make an exemption. So it wasn't just 501c3s. So you just need to know that and make sure you know that. They're going to ask the tax ID. Tax ID is generally in most New York State companies starts with a 13, and it's got a series of other numbers. Most, not all. In Pete's case, maybe his agency started 150 years after mine. His starts with a 31, but it's 2 digits and then another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 digits that are behind that in order to be able to apply. But you need to make sure you have that organizational tax ID. Why? If you're tax exempt, why would you have to have the tax ID? Anybody know? Take a guess.
So it could be
Go
a
ahead.
write-off for other companies? They can write it off?
That could be something for the grant organization that becomes a write-off, because we're talking about a business here, right? So this is actually a business, so they would want the tax ID. But what's the other reason? Proof that you're a charity. You know, I could just walk up and say, hey, I represent JT Charities. And now there's no such thing that I know of, but now, if Pete can use PS Charities, I should use JT Charities. Anyway, if there's no such thing, they would be able to tell instantly. There's a quick database, and they can just go online. If they can't find it and know you're not a real charity, they're not going to give you money. Unfortunately, as in every institution in the world, churches, charities, businesses, there's hopefully 90% of it's okay, but I would venture to say that there are criminals in everything. And I don't mean that to insult anyone, but because of that truth, the checking is a little bit more detailed than it's ever been. Okay, on we go. Did I lose Someone? No, I want to make sure I didn't lose anyone. Okay, just a few other things. So all the basic things, so the address, organizational, phone, website. Why would they want the website? Anybody
They
know?
can check it out.
They want to see a little bit of what you're doing already. Maybe you're already doing some version of the program and you just ask them to continue funding it. So they want to see they get an idea of that, as the case might be. And then it asks, who's the person in charge? By the way, who gets in trouble if the grant's not followed at the organization? Who's the person that is CEO? The big fall guy or fall guy?
Whoever signed for it.
What's that? Whoever
Signed for it.
Whoever signed for it. And guess who that person usually is? That's the executive director. So that's one of the reasons why executive directors get paid the big bucks, if they get paid at all, as the case might be. In a lot of charities, that may not be the case. It may be an entire volunteer charity, but the executive director becomes the person for that. Who else is responsible for the fiscal organization of of that? Who could get in trouble if something isn't done properly?
Whoever's doing the financing.
Finance person. And then there's another group of people that I'm thinking of that become really important to that as well. Who else would that be? Board of
Staff?
directors. Board of directors.
Okay.
Not so much the staff unless there was direct embezzlement. But if something just wasn't spent properly, they're going to look to the board and say, why did you let that happen? So as the case might be, they're very, very responsible. So if any of you are going to start your own charity or you're going to work with an organization and you're going to help write grants for them, now you as a grant writer probably won't get in trouble, but your integrity is questioned. If you give money to an organization that it's not organized. I went to visit an organization yesterday. The organization was shut down because there was no management system. They weren't tracking the funds. They weren't reporting their 990s, which is the IRS form that's reported at the end of the period for every charity. Things like they didn't do any of that for the last 7 or 8 years. So none of that was reported. So they shut the place down, and are in danger now. The IRS has been very kind, probably because of COVID, to not shut them down already. They could have been shut down and lose their tax exemption, but there are people now working to clean all that up. So it's really important to just understand why these things are just so important. Having a good financial system. As a matter of fact, if you're going to accept a grant, you need to plan that every dime spent on that grant, there's a tracking mechanism to keep all of the pieces together. It can be informal, and then if it's informal, you call me up and talk to me about how you report those things, and go from there. And you need to have, I'm going to say this, original receipts as much as possible. Now we're more of a digital world than ever, so you may be able to print multiple copies and things like that, but you want to be able to track all those things. Okay, so they asked the information about the executive director, which is good. And is the executive director the contact for the application? That could be a yes or no. There are oftentimes the questions that they want answered. I don't want my CEO to answer it. I want to answer it. It's usually something quick or something relates to a piece of paper or something that's generally I have. It depends on what you're doing and what you're writing. Point of contact is the person who is going to have the basic information relative to that grant, as the case might be. Then in this case, they ask for alternate contact. Guess what? That's where you can all go. So that's a good thing. All right, let's talk a little bit about some of the things that are put in there. So they asked the organizational mission. So I listed at the time the YMCA's mission there. So you can see that paragraph, and this was the mission statement at the time. Actually, it still is basically our mission, and you can see that we tried to the national mission state. We followed the direction of the national mission statement. That's not what this is. We tried to make sure that all of these things were seen by our agency. So if you want just a couple of things that I think a mission statement should have, it talks a little about diversity. Is that a big word right now?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
It's a huge word right now. So you definitely, so we included that because we knew that was a major buzzword in our in our day and age. So we wanted to make sure we talked about that. Now, when you say inclusion for all, is there anyone that we can leave out if we're going to say that?
No.
That means we're making an attempt that everyone feel welcome. Now, I don't, now we do have some challenges with that because even though we say inclusion for all, it may not be possible for all. So for example, if you've ever been to our old building, here's one of the challenges that we have. If someone handicapped comes to the YMCA and you come to the front of the steps, and they're not able to walk, they can't get in. So we have actually set people at the door to help lift and carry people in. That's not the best thing, but we're working now on getting a lift put in on the Y because we want we have a pool. What better way to help someone to work on leg strength and being able to use a pool? So we're working on that. So you want to be careful with the wording that you use to make sure it represents what you're able to do or allows for the exemptions. And so we really try to do that. And then we talk a little bit about what we're doing so you can see positive development of our youth, promotion of healthy living, and fulfilling of our social responsibility. Many YMCAs don't do a lot of social responsibility. They're just gym and swims. And so that means you go there to play basketball, work out, or swim. In our case, it's a little bit more than that. So we try to make sure that was all emphasized in our mission. And then we talked a little bit more about what we believe. We did this particularly because we wanted the churches to connect to us. We didn't want the churches to see us as something totally different. The YMCA started as a Christian organization, and we don't want people to think that we've just thrown that to the dogs. What we've done is it might be minimized and not as strong wording as it used to be. As a matter of fact, in our national mission statement, it says it connects us with a part of the universal Christian belief. So it kind of connects that. And it all depends on what your charity is. If you have a religious purpose, don't be ashamed of what it is. Go ahead and express that. But then just that your services could be limited by some people in their understanding of that. I think it can be religious and you can still serve and do anything like that. When I was with the Salvation Army, we did housing programs. We accepted the money and we made sure that we didn't pay for anything from a grant or from some of our donors that someone had to be paid for their spiritual beliefs. We found other money for that. So that way we could still be able to do those kinds of things that they want to do a spiritual connection. So you have to figure that out for yourself if anything you're doing it has a spiritual thing. Okay, so now they asked, what do we do that supports the above mission? And you can see there were a whole lot of things listed here. And actually the text box is bigger, so I'm gonna pull it down a little bit and see if it gives me all of that. See, you can see it got pretty big. So we talked about our housing, we talked about all the things. They may ask you a little bit about what your organization is doing already. If you're representing an organization that's already in existence, find out the history. Find out if it's a good history. If it's a bad history, you have to be very creative in how you write because you may be a different person and you may be able to take it to a new level, but sometimes bad news sticks around for a long, long time. We had a scandal here back in 2007. We really didn't escape that scandal until 2017. And even once the blue now, it still comes up. So, what do you do? Look, you just up front, you explain, hey, that was then, this is now, this is what's different, this is what we're going to do. So you list out your programs. Other questions that I ask, outcomes. So we gave an explanation of that. And at the time, we have a non-duplicated count of 9,000 annually. What does non-duplicated mean? So non-duplicated count. What do you think? Any thoughts? Pete's in my office. He just came in and he said, can't copy it. And that's a piece of it. But an unduplicated count means everyone counted once. So if I'm in 2 programs and I count you, I could end up counting them twice. So so we're serving 9,000 people, but I want to make sure none of those numbers are duplicated. So sometimes you want to take a look across that. So we serve everyone at least once. The name comes up twice, that means you only count them once. And we drop that number from the total until we have an unduplicated count. Is that an important thing for people to know?
Yes, for sure.
It lets them know how far your agency reaches. How deep can you go? How many people can you handle? How many people can you manage? What can you do? The variety of services. It shows an awful lot of things. We talked a little bit about, you can see in there, we put in the highest low income demographics of the city of Yonkers. Why would we want to say that? Why would we want to talk about poor people? Because it resonates with those with money, that they're helping someone who needs it and has no other means to be able to get money to do these kinds of things in their community. So it's an important thing. Educational levels, all those kinds of things. You, to some degree, you have to exploit the need. And in the application, not just explaining it to the public, in the application, you have to explain to them why you need this, why you're serving, why your outcomes are what they are. And so I gave, all that information and went from there. Annual operating budget. Most of us don't know the operations of an agency over the course of the year. At the time, that was our annual operating budget for the YMCA. So 2.655 million is what we operate out of. Just as a note, so you guys get an idea of how much of it, 2 million of that is my responsibility. The other 655 is responsibility of all the other directors here at the YMCA. So that's how involved with grant writing that I am. Grants can be a very powerful tool for making an organization work. Just yesterday, I completed on my desk, Wednesday, $220,000 in claims in one day. So money really does flow in this whole grant field. So if you become good at it, do lots of it. Okay. It asks a number of questions that all this relates to the mission. So we're going to move down a little bit. Now it asks about population demographics. Now I didn't pull all the detail and all those kinds of things, but I wanted you to see the kinds of things that they asked for. So they asked for ages. What age are you serving? And not every program serves every person. So they might, if they ask this, just give them your best guess as to what you're going to be serving. Now, one of the difficulties of this is sometimes they ask this before you're doing a program. So you can't really answer this and say, there were 3-year-olds and 11, 17-year-old, 11 people in the 6 to 17 category or whatever it is. You can't always answer that. So you have to kind of a guess, and then you could just let them know when you're talking with whoever the person is that's handling your account or your relationship with them, and say, hey, we're going to send you the actuals later on. Does that mean I should keep track of these records as people are coming in? What if somebody refuses to give me the information? What do I do? If someone refuses to give you the information, what do you do?
Take an educated guess.
You can take an educated guess. That is one possibility. Not
Make it a
necessarily wrong.
requirement to
Make it a requirement to be in the program. That's certainly a possibility at all. Also, or sometimes you provide the service and you just don't count them in the numbers. It all depends if it affects your funding in any way. If you have to serve, if one of the things that says we're going to serve 50 people, and you have 49 and this person is number 50, and they say they don't want to give you any information, guess what? You want to look for one more person to replace that person because there's certain data that you have to share. Now, the other thing is people might be a little bit more willing because what is the one piece that I said you don't necessarily share? Names, family names, things like that. Sometimes if you don't share people's names, they're more willing to share the data. So sometimes you have to work to help them understand that you're not tracking their names, you're tracking their results. Why do you think they would ask all these different age categories? Why would that be important? Or even race categories or socioeconomic status, why would they ask all of that? Because they want to be able to rule somebody out, or they want to include people in. The idea is that all this is there to make sure that people from right across the board get services as needed. Now, if your program is a seniors program, you would certainly say that earlier when you were talking about your mission, you want to be able to show, here's who we're serving, here's what we're doing. And now it's funny that this is actually a newspaper that's asking for this kind of information. What they want to do is be able to show back. I believe that they wanted to keep all this data so they could publish an article later on to say, we have served, boom. There's a purpose on their end as well for doing this. They're not just giving me money to give me money. There's some purpose on their end. Now there are charitable organizations that do it just to give and don't want the information for anything other than being able to raise more money, as the case might be. So anyway, on it goes. Populations, gender. Now this is kind of difficult. Gender has now become a more difficult thing. in 2 years' time, this probably would not be acceptable. And since 2 years and we did this application, this may no longer be an acceptable way of asking this question. Because now it's considered more genders. How many? About 8 genders now? Something like that. So you want to be that. Then I asked for a project title. And in this case, we call it the HEPA Club. HEPA was Healthy Eating and Physical Activity Club. So we are going to bring a group of people together to do activities. So, you know, we read through all of that, and then we gave information about all of that. Project summary, maximum 250 words. This printout obviously isn't showing everything, but if I pulled it, you could see there's more things there. And we talked about the programs we're going to do, the things, all of that. Project summary, project description. What would be different between the project summary and the project description?
The description a little bit more detailed than the summary?
Yes, same thing. One is just a brief statement. The 250 words is my elevator speech. They want to be able to describe to the public, hey, this is the money that we're funding to the YMCA, and here's the brief statement. They can publish that. They can't publish 1,000 words. Not for every organization they might have chosen to help. So those are things that you definitely want to look at. And so if I pull these windows, you'll see there's a whole lot more wording behind there because we had up to 1,000. By the way, if they say 250 words and I put 260, what will happen?
Disqualified.
You can disqualify yourself. So follow the rules. That's why the rule was to go through everything. And I went through everything. I pulled every last thing that I could do in order to be able to answer all of those questions. And we went through that. So, and then asked about the project need. It's kind of moved things around a little bit, but the project need, community need, adjust with the project. In this case, we had that, we responded to that. Project need is an important piece of your proposal. You have to be able to state why this is needed in your community. And it's not just because you and your mother think so. You know, you need to be able to say, the city of Yonkers was able to demonstrate that the 10701 zip code has 8 sections of poverty within it. And where do you get that data? Anybody want to take a guess where we can get that kind of information from? If you're going to talk about community, what's that?
I said the census.
The census is one important place you can get that. You can get numbers, data, information, all those kind of things. Where else can you get that from? Other charities. Sometimes you just, you can just look and see what other people have written about that community and other things. There are program studies. What I have found helpful, and if you're right at the City of Yonkers, this might be helpful to you. What I find helpful is the City of Yonkers has on its website a department called Planning and Development. In the planning department, they list the 5-year plan for the City of Yonkers and what the poorest communities are and who's underserved and where the development's going and all those kinds of things. Do you think I look at that? I do, and I do a lot. Because why should I do the research if it's already there? Somebody's already done that research. It's definitely worth doing. Okay. Then I asked total project cost, and in this case, you'll see we asked for 100,000, and the amount requested was 100,000. Why are those two numbers the same? Just simply because it means either you fund it or we're not doing this project. That was the whole plan. In some cases, you might have someone else who's willing to contribute to a project. They'll complete 50 and you want to ask for 50. We were going for maximum amounts. So yes, no, if you had other people who were contributing to the project, and you had all those, if yes, what are the amounts of sources secured for funding? So they might even ask the details about who else is funding it. They want to look to make sure you're not double dipping. They want to look to see that other people have bought in, that this is not an idea from, Saturn, that really it's something that other people are buying into. Some people take the easy way out. Who else is buying in? Well, they're a bad name. We don't want to give you money because we don't want to associate with that organization. Or they're a good name. If we connect with them, it's good for us as an organization as well. So, again, I'm just really briefing the application. How this project contribute to the community building? Yeah, it's good questions to answer. Or project outcomes. What will this project specifically do? Um, um, how will this project impact community? I can see some of these blue things have moved around. What are sustainability plans for funding this year? For past funding this year. So if I come up with enough money, let's say they gave me that $100,000, and it got things off the ground, they're asking, what are we going to do right after that funding is gone? Now that's something you to give thought to. That might be one of the reasons you might rule it out, because you don't have an idea of where you're going to get any more funding from. So you might just want to be able to follow it through this way. So developing sustainability plans, all of those kinds of things. What's the date you can start the project? What's the date you're going to end the project? Again, they ask the broad questions, and they continue to ask questions that relate to that. They asked, in this case, they asked, if we don't give you the full 100K, what would happen if we gave you 50K? Could you still sustain this? Or 25K? Those will maybe questions that you will have to answer. Have you received funding from the Gannett Foundation previously? Yes. No. By the way, I'm saying this name. Please write Gannett down, the Gannett Foundation, and see if they're still active and it's one of the places that you may want to check for funding. It may still be active, and so we've just gone through an application. You can see you can answer everything. That's great. Now they talked about a particular program of Community Thrives. That's all. Remember that in the beginning of the application, it said, click here for more information. That's where it talks about that. It talked about several particular objectives that they wanted to do, and one of them was community hunger. So that's why we chose this application. So that kind of thing. And then they asked about how we found out. That just lets them know that they're advertising in the right places. If I asked all of you, I mentioned Gannett Westchester newspapers a while ago, and nobody knew who I was talking about. So I would venture to say it's really good for everyone to know where information is being picked up, because obviously it's not the newspaper like it was for the previous generation. People my age and older, when they want to know something, they go to the newspaper, and they might go to the news or television. But in the modern generation, let's go 30 and younger. Where do they get the information from?
Internet, online.
Internet, social media. What else? Anything else?
Friends.
Friends, which yeah, they're friend people. People do that as well. So if they're trying to figure that out too. So don't think that they're not trying to market from this. They're trying to figure out where you're reading, so that they can go back and they can make sure they make those a bigger tool. That's why now you see newspapers that were once only print only, now often available online. All of that growth comes from that. They ask questions that are relative to them. Make sure you answer those questions too. So if your organization provides services in one of the Gannett markets, would you be considered for additional operating grant for your organization? See, hey, that would probably be a yes in most cases. So, and again, they listed again, which is really a courtesy. Again, the date in which it's due, the time in which it's due, and that all applications must be submitted online. Those are the same things we read at the beginning. Would it have been valuable to have read this whole application through first? It would be.
Yeah.
Very much so, because again, we found things that maybe we wouldn't have been able to answer. So it's important to know ahead of time before you waste your time. Now, don't get me wrong. Answer as many questions as you can if you want to, if you have that kind of time. And if you can't submit to this organization, save those answers. We're in the computer generation. You can save it somewhere, because there might be another grant that fits. If I were to take you into my file, I'm going to show you my grant file. Let's see if I'm going to be able to show it to you. So here's my grant file. Okay. Can you see? I don't know what you can see. Sometimes you can't tell when you're doing that. Can you see a list that starts with Community Thrives, Aetna? Can you see all of that?
No, we're still at the same page that you left
So
us.
I have to do something with the share screen. So let me figure that out. One quick second. I want to give you an idea of what I do in order to track all of this stuff. Maybe I have to unshare and then reshare. See, this is that stuff you can't figure out on your own. You have to have other people online with you. Let me just share this, and I'm gonna go through this. I'm these verbally share.
Yeah.
I have about 100 categories of grants that I have done. If I click on any one, it breaks down into the years that grant I wrote for that grant. If I break down further, it breaks down to all the reports and the quarterly reports or the monthly reports or the annual reports to that grant. All of those things that I track it. Why do I keep all of that? Well, obvious reasons. Reporting. Obvious reason number two. What if the YMCA decides to get rid of me tomorrow? I'm going to have a copy of my grant files so that if I go to another organization, I've got all the basic data and information of everything that I've done for a while. Every once in a while, I'll have someone come and ask me, how much in grant writing have you done over the years? And I can easily say that I raise $2 million a year. So it helps to be able to say what your value is when you become a grant writer and you become good at it. We talked last week that there's some basic skills that are very important to grant writing. And they are basically, one, being a little bit of a writer. You have to be able to express yourself in words. If you don't write as well, then you need to invest in a voice to text kind of program. And hopefully that will capture everything properly for you, but you still need someone to proofread that because it doesn't always catch punctuation. So that's an important thing. And the other thing is you have to have very basic fiscal skills. Okay, that means if you spent $10, you should be able to write that down. Another $10, write that down. Another $10, write that down, and have somewhere that backs up those three purchases of $10 and show the $30 that you spent. Some very basic accounting skills. You don't have to be an accountant to be a grant writer or a grant manager, as the case might be. You just have to be someone who knows how to track that information. So, all right, that's where we're at for the moment. Any questions about what we talked about so far?
No.
I think I found it. Can you see that? Can you see that? Can you see Community Thrive, Aetna, Holiday? Can you see all of that? So you can see that now. So if you looked at all of my grant categories, all these grant categories that I'm showing you, these are all the things that I have done. And then if we click on any one of them, I'm gonna pick one of my government grants. So let's look at right now. Let's look at Snug. I like Snug. Okay, these are all the grants. This is how long we've been doing it, and you can see every year that I worked on with Snug and all the detail in the background and all those kinds of things. City of Yonkers is what COY stands for. All those kind of things. And then if you can see 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021. I'm going to click on 2021. Actually, here's a report that we did for the first quarter. Here's all the documents I had to keep. A lot of paperwork. April, May, June, July, August, all of those things that I track. And all of it mostly, let me show you this. Let's go to July, because I know that's complete. You may not be able to see it. I don't know if you can see all of that. Can you see a yellow kind of worksheet? No,
it didn't open.
It doesn't open, so it opens up differently. It shows things a little bit differently. But I was just showing you, this is what we see. We don't see. Okay, so there's too much to show, but it breaks down. If you look, some of these things. So I put out a claim the other day. It was about 150 pages. It was for $80,000. So it will show you different things and how much money I've claimed, all those kinds of things. So most of it's all Excel spreadsheets. They calculate for me.
I could show them too.
All these things calculate for me. I think that Pete's going to try to show you, give you an idea. So these are all amounts that we claim. This is just for 1 month. So you can kind of see it a little bit. Or there might be other areas, By the way, this is the budget that I did for, let me see, I'm going to see if I can share this. I'm figuring this stuff out, so forgive me. Let's do share again and go to here. This is the budget that I did for the Community Thrives.
I got it. Yeah, it's showing now.
You can put back on.
They can mute. Okay, my bad.
So these are the things that we created relative to that, and then so you can see that budget. You can see here's how the whole 100,000 was going to be spent, and some of the breakdown for how we were going to use that money. So you could see where all the money was coming from, where it was all going to be spent. So we showed them very clearly as all those other countries. We did find alternate funding, so that's what the 49,824 and what the 25,000 spent showed. So we did find other monies for that. So overall, this budget was about $175,000. So
I have
we
a
showed them.
question. So
Yes.
you see, like there's a lot of zeros in the sense that like it's not, it's like all whole dollars, whole numbers. Does that matter if, because I know a lot of times too that it's not always that perfect. Is it
No.
recommended to?
In a budget, it is recommended. In the budget, it's recommended. In the reporting, you might want to be a little bit more detailed, because you could put 7,800 period 1-4.
Okay.
Obviously your actuals are very different. This was a budget worksheet.
Oh, got it.
My reporting looks very, very different. It has it broken down into cents. Then I have a few grants, just so you're aware, that only allow me to submit whole dollars.
Oh.
So I round down or round up. So in most cases, I try to round up wherever I can so that I don't lose money. I'd rather they give me 35 cents extra than for me to come up 35 cents short. So just as a note. So that's all a part of the basic budgeting skills that you would want to be able to think about a little bit. Anyway, we've been on for a little while. Any questions about anything so far? Well, I'm going to be really good to all of you. I'm not giving you any homework this week, but next week we're going to write a grant together, but we're all writing it. So we're gonna hit a grant like this, Community Thrives, and we are going to walk through it. What I will do is I'm going to send it to Pete. Pete will send it out to everyone. Everyone will read the application through. So the assumption is that when we start next week, that you've already read the application, and then we're going to start writing a grant together, just to get everybody's feet wet, to try some things. So I want you to be able to do that. I don't want to walk away from this assuming that everyone knows how to write grants. Unless you've actually done it, you've not been through the process. So, all right. Is everybody comfortable with that thinking?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Hopefully so. I just don't want to leave. I don't want to send you out. I don't want to put you out there to send you out there with the wolves. I want you to be able to actually do something from this, or else you're wasting your time. And we'll do something small. We won't do a $10 million grant and have to itemize that, because it'll take us forever. We'll do a small grant. We'll do it together and see where it takes you. All right. So unless there are no other questions, I really appreciate you all taking your time. I couldn't figure out last week. The file was too big to send, and I didn't set up with my IT guy the opportunity to be able to share files outside of our network. So I will still try to send the first week and the second week to you during this week, and try to get all that to you, so you have all this on recording and get an idea of the detail. Okay. All right, everyone, thank you for today. I'm going to pass it back to Pete before we hang up, in case he wants to say anything to everyone.
No, just wanted to say thank you so much to John and everybody who took the time to learn this key, valuable information. And I look forward to writing the grant next week with you all. Hope everybody has a lovely weekend, and you have my number if you need to reach out for any other questions. And then I could reach out to John until we get the last week and this week forwarded to you. Until then, take care now. Bye-bye then.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Everybody's out.